Prise de débat. The member for Lakeland.
C-5 proves that one thing for certain, the Liberals broke the system and Canadians pay the price. An unprecedented $5 trillion of Canadian capital went south and into other countries, and they killed $670 billion in major natural resource projects that could have been built by Canadians with Canadian aluminum and steel for Canada's economic strength, self-reliance, security, and unity. In 5 years alone, 16 major projects were sidelined because of them, cost Canadians over $176 billion in lost nuclear, critical mineral mines, LNG terminals, pipelines, indigenous-led projects, and energy corridors delayed or derailed by lawsuits, bureaucracy, delay, and Liberal policies. Imagine how powerful and self-reliant Canada would be today. Instead, Canada ranks last in the G7 for development, and the Liberals now scramble to patch what they themselves destroyed. Bill C-5 does not fix the fundamentals. It admits failure. Hundreds of thousands of Canadian job losses, with more to come, unaffordable power and fuel, skyrocketing costs of essentials. What the Liberals have to do is what the Conservatives said all along: scrap Bill C-69, Bill C-48, the federal industrial carbon tax, the Canadian oil and gas cap, and all their other anti-development policies and laws. Proponents today still face unclear rules, no concrete timelines, interference, and limited transparency. As the Transport Minister said herself in committee, quote, "We have come to a place in Canada where we have such a thicket of processes and rules and regulations that we are unable to build with the alacrity that this moment in time requires." But, you know, it's not just during this current moment that major projects can't get built in Canada with brisk and cheerful readiness. That's been the worsening reality of the last decade of Liberal anti-development laws, policies, and messages. That dense, cumbersome thicket was created by the very same government that claims to be new, while half the ministers are the old ones. Conservatives offer real solutions: cut red tape, gatekeepers, taxes, create clear rules, attract private investment, and fast-track major projects for the benefit of all Canadians. The place the Liberals should start is with all the projects stuck in the federal queue right now. They're in the national interest, and they're waiting for a green light, like the Kissalissim's LNG project, LNG Canada Phase 2, and Bruce Power upgrades. And they should be looking at a dedicated West Coast export pipeline to serve Asian energy demand that they killed 10 years ago, Indigenous-backed roads to unlock the Ring of Fire. Those should be on the national interest list and fast-tracked yesterday. Nevertheless, Conservatives worked in good faith with other opposition parties and with the Liberals to help improve C-5. And here I want to thank the Conservative team for all their efforts. It will be up to the Liberals to deliver on their rhetoric and to keep up all their big but vague promises to Canadians. It will ultimately be up to Canadians to determine whether they do, and Conservatives will hold them accountable in the meantime. Even now, Bill C-5 does set up a politically driven and determined process. Ministers will decide who goes ahead, who waits, and can even one day decide a project they said was in the national interest earlier is no longer, and remove it from the list, or whatever ad hoc review a responsible minister determines, a problem I tried to fix. That's inherent uncertainty, huge powers behind closed doors, and not a permanent fix or way to regulate and review projects in the sector. Most important to Canada's economy, imperative to help turn poverty into prosperity, and to help lower emissions globally. And C-5 does blur the lines, just like C-69 did. What's worse is the Liberals know it. At committee, the Canada-U.S. Trade Minister admitted, quote, "Whoever puts forward these projects, be they public, private, Indigenous, provincial, or municipal, don't have to go through an evaluation and approvals process that could take 5 to 6 years." So he admits the Liberal system takes years and delays building. It's not clear whether projects that are actually provincial or municipal jurisdiction may end up in the C-5 queue for a federal review, a similar overreach problem in C-69. And the mix of public and private infrastructure should cause taxpayers to take notice too. But again, the obvious first step should be to fix that whole evaluations and approvals process the minister himself says is too long. Proponents and the government itself are trapped by the red tape they imposed. Still, Bill C-5 does not fix it for everyone, but will fast-track a chosen few. At first, it didn't even define national interest. That left every decision to the whims of cabinet and a lack of clarity for everyone involved. But Conservatives fought to require the government to define national interest with clear, specific criteria. We succeeded in adding that necessary clarity and structure to a process that started with none. Conservatives also successfully incorporated the requirement of a public list of national interest projects with timelines, estimated costs, and rationale, application of the Conflicts of Interest Act to officials and proponents to prevent abuse and politically connected insiders from pursuing personal profit over the public interest behind closed doors, mandatory national security reviews for hostile regimes and state-owned investments into major national interest projects to combat foreign interference and economic imperialism from adversaries and to protect Canadian sovereignty and security, the requirement for the government to fully deliver on its mandatory duty to consult, and a clear map for Indigenous consultation with public reporting to build trust, earn confidence, respect Indigenous rights and title, and so major projects can get to yes in a good way to minimize predictable court challenges and delays. And annual independent reviews of project progress so all Canadians can measure the Liberals by their actions, not just their words, and hold them accountable. These amendments matter. They bring transparency, accountability, more certainty, more clarity, and integrity to a bill that originally had none. But even with these improvements, major concerns remain. Bill C-5 still allows ministers that power to remove a project from the national interest list at any time without notice, reason, or recourse. I propose to remove that power to take projects off the list once they make the cut, because that uncertainty may continue to push investors and builders to other countries with clear rules and more predictability, just as the Liberals have done to Canada for the past decade. Since delay is death to major projects, Conservatives also aimed to give concrete timelines that don't actually exist in Bill C-5, despite all the Liberals' claims about a 2-year process. I proposed a 1-year deadline to issue permits once a project is designated, a 90-day limit for the Governor and Council, the Cabinet, to make final decisions, a requirement to prioritize private or public-private funding to protect taxpayers. Canada should, to prioritize that private funding. Canada should be a place where the private sector can take big risks and build big things on their time and on their dime, not where taxpayers have to be on the hook to get anything done. The Liberals rejected those amendments. Then I brought forward that amendment to apply the Conflict of Interest Act to enforce those clear safeguards to prevent corruption and block Liberals from stacking the deck in favor of their friends. This shouldn't be necessary, of course, but with a Prime Minister who hides his conflicts, where he pays his taxes, and ran a mega company, Brookfield, invested in all the kinds of projects C-5 would fast track. Although under that Prime Minister, it mostly invested in the US and abroad, that caused a flurry and a huddle among Liberal MPs, a couple of odd questions, and then the Liberals voted against it. But thanks to Conservative pressure and support from another opposition party, we forced the government to follow their own laws designed to prevent corruption and to put the public interest ahead of partisanship. Conservatives also got limits on Cabinet to prevent them from exempting 15 foundational laws that no government should ever sidestep. All Canadians can be forgiven for wondering why the Liberals would have presented such a potentially significant law free from all of those laws in the first place. Conservatives pushed crucial amendments to ensure provincial consultation and to protect provincial jurisdiction and provincial decision-making power. Because what the Liberals must show is that they can ensure big projects in federal jurisdiction can be built for Canada's economic strength, security, and national unity, not meddle in others. They have to find a will, a spine, a set that they failed to show in the past decade in order to enforce their own jurisdiction, to treat the national interest approvals in the general advantage of Canada, uphold legal and jurisdictional certainty for proponents to build their projects when approvals face challenges and obstruction. Otherwise, this will all be big talk and a lot of delays without fixing the real problems, which are the anti-development laws and policies the Liberals themselves decided they needed this queue-jumping C-5 to work around. Conservatives' work continues today with sub-amendments to clarify and fix flaws. We propose a parliamentary committee with a non-government chair. No government should judge its own actions. Democratic accountability anchors this principle so that sub-amendment strengthens review with independent, balanced representation across parties. Canadians expect transparency, not spectacle, real checks, not blanket approval. Canada holds vast potential. Natural resources, energy, and infrastructure sustain millions of jobs, fund public services, build communities, and bolster global trade. Any bill for national development must reflect this reality and champion, not hinder, the sectors that drive prosperity. Canadians need an approach that does not curb ambition, repel investment, or deny opportunity. Canada cannot tolerate a framework that casts resource development as a threat rather than a strength. Canada demands confidence, not caution, momentum, nor paralysis. Conservatives champion responsible resource development, independent oversight, and a united Canada, and our amendments to C-5 uphold those values.
You're here.
Conservatives believe in strong paychecks and unity through opportunity, not division and double standards through federal overreach. We believe in reconciliation through...
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I emphasized during my comments, is that we have a new Prime Minister that actually brought all the First Ministers together. And it was a very successful discussions that they had. You had individuals like Doug Ford, a progressive conservative in Ontario, working along with Wab Kinew, a New Democrat from Manitoba, different premiers, different political parties, working with a Liberal national government, building a Team Canada approach at building a stronger and healthier country. I'm grateful that the Conservatives saw the light to support Bill C-5, and we appreciate that. And I'm wondering if the member can provide her thoughts in regards to having a Team Canada approach at building these projects, which include the stakeholders and beyond, Indigenous concerns, Premier's concerns, and many others.
Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Well, Conservatives will not stand in the way of the Liberals' sudden and often diametrically opposed to the 10 years of their own words and actions efforts to get Canada working and building, as Conservatives have called on them to do the entire time. We're hopeful, but we do remain skeptical that Bill C-5 can fully solve the problem of the current broken federal regulatory mess that the Liberals made. We believe in reconciliation and know that Indigenous people want to pursue equity ownership and more powers of development, self-determination with their own rights and title. But that's why the government should heed the words of the various chiefs who participated and of the AFN national chief, who cautioned that because of the lack of clarity around the duty to consult in Bill C-5, which Conservatives tried to fix, all approvals out of this may face course challenges, which will delay building. The Liberals need to fix that.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. Le député.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask my colleague from Lakeland a question. Well, first of all, the Conservatives, they supported closure, which is something that is stupid and unreasonable. We also understand that at the environmental level there are some issues, but at report stage, I want to note something where the member played an important role. We took out of Annex 2 the Indian Act. So the ability for the government to ignore the Indian Act and take away fundamental rights. And listen, you know, we would have liked to have seen the bill talk about the free and informed, you know, consent priority, but a major step was taken in committee, which is recognized by Indigenous people. So I thank my colleague from the Conservative Party for her collaboration on that. But what does she think about the fact that Liberals didn't vote in favor of that amendment?
Member for Lakeland.
Well, I think it betrays the lie that they have been peddling for 10 years, which is that the most important relationship to them is with Indigenous people. Yet they have a track record of killing major resource projects and pipelines that Indigenous people worked years and years to negotiate in a good way with big companies to secure their own source revenue for self-sufficiency and self-reliance. There are big questions about how on earth the Liberals could try to bring in this law that exempted 16 different acts and 6 different policies, including the Indian Act. So I appreciate the colleague's comments. I thank him for his collaboration. And this is the major issue that these Liberals must get right. Otherwise, they risk and threaten getting to yes in a good way, which every single Canadian and Indigenous person in this country deserves.
Comments, questions et commentaires. The member for Cariboo Prince George.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I truly appreciate our honourable colleague here. Now, this is a little bit out of her scope of the file, but they really missed, the Liberals really missed a key opportunity with this piece of legislation. Over 7 million Canadians are without a primary care physician. We're in a mental health crisis within our country, and they could have very easily included provisions, a Blue Seal program within this bill. So through you, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to hear our honourable colleagues' comments.
Member for Lakeland.
That's a very good point to my honorable colleague. And this is part of the concern we have with the government bringing forward a bill where it's trying to fix the mess that it self-made. But, you know, maybe I'll just take this opportunity to acknowledge that colleague for all of his passionate, dedicated, steadfast advocacy for health, for mental health, for wellness, for men, for all Canadians, and congratulations in his successful passage of the 988 line, which is a lifeline for vulnerable and at-risk Canadians. Congratulations, Speaker. We're so proud to have him on our team.
Reprise de débat, resuming debate. Le député.
The honourable member for Pierre Boucher.